Okay, so we're going to start off by talking about arrhythmias, bradycardias, and AV block. Now, when we're talking about arrhythmias are basically an abnormal rhythm. So these occur due to either the SA node receiving and conducting the impulse too fast, too slow, or simply irregularly. Now, you need to be aware that the SA node is your pacemaker of the heart, your natural dominant pacemaker. It's known as dominant pacemaker. So it kind of sets the heart rate for the entire heart. The AV node then kind of carries on from there, but here there is a bit of a delay. So before the AV node can pass the impulse onto the Purkinje fibers, there is a delay to allow the atria to fully contract before the ventricles start to contract. Now, there's also the AV node, the bundle of His, the right bundle branch, and the left bundle branch. Now, as I said, SA node sets the normal heart rate to 60 to 100 beats per minute. But in bradycardia, it's basically a reduced heart rate, and the heart rate can go down to 60 beats per minute. So bradycardia is anywhere less than 60 beats per minute. And there's two ways that the SA node can actually be regulated. Now, usually it's by the parasympathetic and sympathetic system. You can modulate the SA node or the conductions or the heart rate, your dominant pacemaker, your dope pacemaker, by parasympathetic and sympathetic. Now, your sympathetic is gonna kind of increase your heart rate because that's what the sympathetic nervous does. It's the fight or flight response, and the parasympathetic is going to rest or digest. So, all right, so these kind of follow a particular pattern, and between the atria and the ventricles we have valves, and these valves are, they have kind of like a leaflet within the valve and an annulus ring around the valve, and this annulus ring is cartilaginous, and that's very, very important. Why is it important that the valve is made out of an annular cartilaginous ring? Because then it prevents the, because that's what prevents, if there's valves in between, that means that the conduction cannot just pass straight through. The cartilage separates the atrium and ventricle, and that is how the conduction doesn't just spread everywhere at the same time. It's because of these cartilaginous parts of the valves. Now, in bradycardia, a heart rate less than 60 beats per minute, something's obviously going to happen to our dominant pacemaker. It's going to become slowed or absent. So just like electricity gives power to something, the SA node is an electrical power outlet. And let's say it's a light. Now, as soon as you walk into the room, it lights up by itself. And that automaticity is what's really crucial here when you talk about the SA node. Now, if you have a reduced automaticity because you're unplugging your electrical charge and instead you're filling it with water, it's going to reduce your automaticity. And let's say water is your vagal tone. Water, vagal tone. So if you're, instead of supplying charge to the light, you take away the charge and just fill it with water. If you fill it with water, for example, if you increase vagal tone, increase parasympathetic, that is going to slow down your SA node, either kind of or completely. And you could also decrease sympathetic nervous system. In that case, there's two other things that could happen. You could have a junctional AV node, junctional conduction. Junctional conduction is when the AV node takes over because your dominant pacemaker is not strong enough. But this will only deliver 50 beats per minute, okay? It's a machine. Our heart is a pump, and this is not giving the pump enough strength, enough power, because you now have vagal. Now, the other thing is that forget the AV node. If the SA node was your first one, right? Forget the SA node. Even the AV node's not working. Now it's up to the Purkinje fibers, and this is called a ventricular escape rhythm. Ventricular escape rhythm. You're escaping out of there, and now you're literally relying on your Purkinje fibers, and this is going to deliver half of what your AV node would have delivered. This is going to deliver 25 beats per minute. Okay, fair enough. Now, what is a heart block or an AV node dysfunction? Well, if you have a left bundle branch block or right bundle branch block, yes, that is going to slow down the overall conduction. However, in this case, you are not going to have bradycardia. Why is that? Why in a heart block or left bundle, right bundle branch block, you're not going to have bradycardia? Well, because if you have a left bundle branch block, let's say this one doesn't work, in this case, the depolarization, if this one's not working, this left ventricle is going to have to rely on your right bundle branch to give you a supply this way, to give depolarization, and it's going to have to wait for the depolarization to spread over. And because there's no cartilage between the ventricles, you can rely on that. This does not cause bradycardia. Bradycardia is when there's a slowing between the atria and the ventricles. Now, we talked about reduced automaticity, and then we talked about a conduction block. Now, by the way, this SA node spreads the impulse to the AV node, but that's the P interval, which is the atrial depolarization. But before you can even begin to do ventricular depolarization, you have a PR interval. And the PR interval is the time it takes. Atrial have depolarized, yes. Ventricles have not yet depolarized, fine. But this is the time in between you have activation of the AV node and the bundle of His. So, of course, if you have a block in the AV node or the bundle of His, conduction block, you will have a prolonged PR interval. So we talked about the different types. You have the keywords here are sinoatrial automaticity, junctional rhythm, AV junctional rhythm, and ventricular escape rhythm. What are the causes for arrhythmia or bradycardia? Well, pathophysiological cause can be intrinsic or extrinsic. Intrinsic is aging ischemia. Ischemia would cause necrosis of tissue, which would mean that tissue would no longer fibrosis, which would mean that tissue would no longer conduct. Extrinsic is drugs and metabolic things, which are going to suppress SA node activity by reducing automaticity by increasing vagal tone. Remember, just put water instead of the electricity. Also ischemia of the SA node, because the SA nodal artery is a branch of the right coronary artery in most people. This is going to cause sinus bradycardia. Sick sinus syndrome is idiopathic fibrosis of the SA node, which will cause dysfunction. And I believe that might be it. Oh yeah, you have to consider in athletes they have a physiological reduced bradycardia because they have vagal tone. And you have respiratory sinus arrhythmia, which a lot of people have during respiration, sick sinus syndrome.